So welcome back from that section. So in this particular session, we discuss data extraction in systematic reviews and the entire process of it. So remember to enjoy and have fun with the exercises. Let's go.
Today we'll be looking at something very spectacular, and that we'll be checking up on developing a data extraction form and the data extraction process. So we'll just have a very massive look on how to develop a data extraction form for systematic review. Because as a matter of fact, data extraction is a very relevant aspect of the systematic review, and why it's relevant is because you need to bring out the findings. You need to bring out those relevant characteristics. You need to bring out those necessary elements from those studies you've selected for this review. And we're going to have a detailed look at we're going to have a detailed theoretical insight on what data extraction entails for a systematic review and the process. How can you be able to extract the relevant information from a systematic review using tools like Excel and all that? So enjoy the show and have massive fun while we start. So something traditional to what we've been doing is to have an understanding of what our roadmap for this discussion is going to be. So regardless of where you're listening from, we need to understand what is data extraction, because that is very imperative to get rid of. We need to know what data extraction means. Then we'll now understand what's the data extraction form. How can you develop a data extraction form for a systematic review? What are other considerations that you need to highlight in the data extraction form? Because technically, for you to have your systematic review well detailed and well written, there are basic elements that are very important for you to extract from the papers, and that is where your data extraction comes in place. And now, aside from those traditional information that needs to be reflected on our data extraction form, what are other considerations that we need to do? So that's part of our outline. Then we'll look at the data extraction process, where we'll have hands-on look on examples. Then we'll return back to look at some of the common challenges in data extraction. And then we'll now have insights on ensuring consistency. How can you ensure consistency and accuracy during your data extraction and your best practices? Remember that this systematic review is ideal to be performed using a multidisciplinary approach. So these things are very important to be examined. These are what we're going to be looking at today on our outline. So that's data extraction here. So the question is, somebody outside there, data extraction is just like taking out the truths or taking out some of your dentition, right? To be able to fit it into what you want. So this image out here actually shows a very clear picture of what your data extraction, what the data extraction process is. But now, by virtue of definition, what is data extraction? So data extraction is just like a process of gathering all the relevant information from those selected studies to answer the question. Because once you've assembled your studies in your systematic review, the next thing that is very important now is for you to extract the relevant information from them. So those information now is what you now use in answering your research question. Because let's say, for example, you want to perform a systematic review on anything. And now, let's say, for example, maybe mobile health interventions in Nigeria or in South Africa. Now, that's a very massive question. That's a very good question. And let's say you've got primary studies that are all addressing mobile health intervention. What's next for you to do now is to pick out the necessary ingredients from each of those studies that you use. So some of those could be auto, it could be very diverse things, right? So that is the idea of extracting all those information is what we call the data extraction. And this steps actually ensures that data needed for the analysis and status is captured consistently. So whether regardless of whether you're going to be performing a meta-analysis, because we'll get to that, when we'll be performing a meta-analysis of intervention and all that, we will need to see how we are extracting all the relevant information from the primary articles so that we can be able to queue them into the software. So this is what data extraction entails in systematic reviews. And again, this data extraction is what that produces the characteristics of what the included studies. So the data extraction form that we'll be looking at on the course of this training is still the same thing that is going to produce the what the characteristics of the included findings, or some other studies could call the summary of the findings, which contains the relevant information. So remember that the point and the idea here now is that data extraction now is that process of getting all this information out from each of the papers. You have 10 papers selected following your last session. For you to take out all the relevant information from each of those papers so that you can now assemble them for synthesis is what we call data extraction. That is it. But in this area, now we have to talk about what's the data extraction from. Remember that if you're writing your PhD dissertation or your PhD thesis, or maybe your MSc or whatever, or you're a clinician and you're doing a research to publish a particular evidence. Now, the data extraction form is very relevant. And what point am I trying to make here? The point I'm trying to make is that the data extraction form is just that structured document. It's usually like a spreadsheet that you use it to collect the relevant data from the studies included. So it can capture information like the study author, the year, the location, maybe design. It always contains the various domains for you to be able to record the information that you're interested in. And also some of the intervention details depending on the nature of the research question. So the data extraction form is set up and dependent on your research question, on the type of study that you're conducting. So we're going to actually demonstrate that, showing numerous examples, because let's assume you're doing a particular study that is of social relevance. In that situation, now there are some certain parameters that are here that wouldn't be in your data extraction form. But let's just see what the data extraction form looks like. So this could be a data extraction table where we have study author, research objective. Sometimes can be referred to the title, the methodology, which is all these are the information that I extracted from the papers. So from a methodology, yes, in some scenario, you might break it down in further columns, talk about maybe the study design different, the approach, did it use, what type of paradigm was adopted? Was it a qualitative, mixed method, qualitative or quantitative? In that situation, that is where your data extraction form is going to be more detailed. Then also, other things in your methodology could be your analysis, method of data analysis, method of data collection, in some of your instruments. So in that situation, if you're extracting it from those individual papers, then you have to also specify it in details. Remember that it largely plays a role depending on your supervisor. So your data extraction form has to contain all these domains. All these domains are very imperative and very important for your data extraction. And also another aspect of it is the sample size or participant characteristics. So this could be the number of participants in your comparator group and in your intervention group. Yeah, there are also other domains here. We can also have intervention as a heading, depending on, like we said, it depends on your research question. And in this situation now, it could be that your research question is one that is formulated using the PEO approach model. You can refer back to our previous video or to the earlier session of the video where we explained all you need to know about the models. And those are going to largely influence your data extraction form. So another is also the findings. It could be your main findings, and also could be your study setting, depending on the research question. Now the question now comes how can we develop a data extraction form? Right? When developing a data, so it's just a problem for us to tailor it down to research question, the type of studies that are being reviewed, which I said before, because you need very important templates that are very important. Particularly some of the templates like the Cochrane template or Prisma, they really help a lot. And also you need to modify them to fit your specific needs. So it's just all about whenever you're forming a research data extraction form in your systematic review, you need to make sure that it captures and is very unique to your it's very, very unique to your research question, because the same data extraction form that I use for research A might not be the same data extraction form that I might need for another research because of what? Some things that are unique in the domain of that research. We're going to also explain these things in details. But there are some common things that are always available in your data extraction form. Let's go back to that. The study author is usually common, the objective is common, findings is common, and then maybe the methodology. These are common domains that has to be present in your data extraction form. And now the outcomes as well, depending on the case. Particularly, this is always usually largely applicable when we are extracting information that will lead to meta-analysis, or that will see us extract statistical data. Okay, so we also go ahead there to look at some of the snippet examples that are very imperative for our data extraction. And let's say, for example, you want to do a systematic review on the impact of diet on diabetes in Nigeria. So, for example, at the data extraction form include fields like type of diet, study design, population characteristics, which will include factors like age, BMI, outcomes like blood glucose level and hemoglobin levels, setting as well. So this is some of what we really, really made mention of, because they are very important. And for you to have a very concise and well detailed data extraction form, for you to have this, you really need a proper understanding of your studies. And that's where you need to make sure that during your study selection, you have the ability to extract all the relevant information. So you have the ability to identify the relevant information before including those papers, so that during your extraction, it's going to make a lot of sense, such that you've always had a glimpse of it during your full text screening. And that's what's now motivating you to extract the right information. So we'll take a look at other considerations in the data extraction form. So sometimes there are also other things we need to consider incorporating in our data extraction form. Sometimes it could be the limitations, it could be some of the strengths, it could be the country or region, it could be the quality assessment score, or it could be on any other thing you have in mind. It could be any other thing that you have in mind that is consistent across the included studies or across some of the selected papers. And that is where you need to make sure you capture the relevant information that are necessary and imperative for you. So, like we said, some data extraction form will require you to report the strengths and all that. So there are lots of other considerations out there that can be included in your data extraction. Remember that the whole idea is that your data extraction is solely based on your research question, how your research question is being shaped. And that's what will largely determine your data extraction process. So we're going to just have a look at some of the samples. So I have attached some couple of very beautiful samples of what our data extraction form could look like. Remember, I just already pointed this in the form where we can have research objective, author, and all that. So it depends on how you want to get this form, but I just want to display it as the characteristics of the place. So this is just a blank sample. We can split this further down here. We can have information on, we could split this to the methodology. It could be anything. It could just be anything, right? So that's just the idea. It could be anything that we want to also include in the research. And that's just basically it. So I just want to take a look at this first sample of data extraction, where this study is looking at diabetes self-management education knowledge among nurses in the United Kingdom. Now, if you look at this paper here, you see one thing that is unique to this paper is that what? The first paper study that was extracted is what? Cardwell et al. And the objective of this paper is to assess diabetes self-knowledge in trained and untrained ward nurses. So you see that here the methodology is clearly stated: quantitative methodology, the design, questionnaires for registered nurses and healthcare assistants, right? So we have pre and post intervention assessment. So this is just more like a randomized study. That could be that, and we'll have 43 nurses, sample size 26 RGNs, which is 17 HCAs, which is healthcare assistant. Now, in terms of the findings here, what was extracted is that both trained and untrained nurses. So this here now is usually what we know as the main findings, right? And both trained and untrained nurses lacked basic diabetes management knowledge, intensive specialist support, and improved knowledge. So take a look at the study setting here. You find that all these are what is consistent among the papers that were included in this study. So here we had about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 included papers, and all these are the necessary findings that were extracted from it, with all the location and settings well stated. Now we take a look at this other sample here. Here the study is looking at the experiences and challenges faced by women with postpartum depression in assessing mental health care in Nigeria. So what are the domains of the data extraction from here? We have the study author and date, we have the study aim or title, we have sample size, study design and methodology, we have the outcome of interest, we have the study findings extracted, and we have the study setting. So cool. So now when you look at this study here now, you see that all the domains of the data extraction here is, I think, is unique to this. So if the authors of this study had wanted to add more other extraction, maybe they might want to add type of mental health care and all that. But each data extraction form is unique to each study. So here you see the first study by Adoponri et al. 2023 talked about help seeking. It contains help seeking for moderate to severe perinatal depression in Nigeria. So the implications for a cultural, ecosocial approach to global mental health. So you see that the study had 9 participants. It was a qualitative study using an in-depth one-to-one interviews, and it also showed that it used the thematic analysis. Remember that what I said about methodology and study design, so that you can actually talk about, you can extract the design of the study, extract the method of the data analysis, some of the instruments of data collection, and the overall methodology of the study. So you see that the outcomes here are health-seeking behavior for perinatal depression. It's got the main findings, which is health seeking was pragmatic and influenced by cultural context, stigma and social interaction, stigma influence secrecy in help seeking. So it was conducted in rural and urban settings in Oyo State in Nigeria. Remember that it studies in Nigeria, so that makes it in line here. So same thing applies to the study by Kola et al. And Neka 2018, Herschel 2017, and that also. So I have another example here where we look at the sample tray, effectiveness of lifestyle modification in preventing gestational diabetes among pregnant women in sub-Saharan Africa. So this is still the same thing we talked about. Yeah, study setting now, you have to start seeing studies around several areas in sub-Saharan Africa. This is South Africa, this is South Africa, this is Nigeria, this is South Africa again. And here you look at some of the domains of this study on the effectiveness of lifestyle modification in preventing gestational diabetes among pregnant women in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, Africa, is that this registration form extracted information on the study author and date, the study aim or title, the sample size, the participant characteristics, study design and methodology, exposure specifics. Remember that I said this is more aligned with the PEO model, but it's just specific to this particular research question because it tries to look at some of the lifestyle modifications. So we need to know what are they exposed to in the outcome of interest study setting. So this is just technically what we got from looking at the study by KJ 2019 here that is titled on lifestyle behaviors and beliefs of pregnant women with gestational diabetes, which was a longitudinal follow-up study. Here, if you look at the sample size study, some characteristics here, 239 pregnant women with GDM in Cape Town were followed up with 98 women, 3 to 15 months of postpartum. So it was a cross-sectional design, used a questionnaire, and it's in terms of its exposure specifics. The study, it was what was extracted was the dietary intake, physical activity, and belief relating to this lifestyle during pregnancy and postpartum. Also, some of the outcomes of interest, which could sometimes be referred to the findings, is that inadequate dietary intake, changes in dietary habits, postpartum increased risk of GDM, and it was done in Cape Town. The same applies to the study by Valen, 217, Daniel and Dickey, 214, Creech, 218, and that's it. So take a look again at this data extraction form here that I extracted study from this study on experiences of workplace violence among healthcare staff in Nigeria. Now, some of the domains of this form was study author, title and objective, sample size, study design. Now here, remember that we said that it's always unique to the research question. So there's some certain characteristics that becomes unique. Now here we look at experiences and types of violence, / outcomes. So because this is what is reflected in the title here, workplace violence, right? So that's unique here to this. So it means that looking at the study by Okwaraji and Agowa in this particular review, the study was aimed to study and assess the prevalence of burnout and psychological distress among nurses. Remember that all these here are the included studies, are some of the included studies. Now, in terms of sample size, 28 nurses, observational cross-sectional study, some of the type of violence or experience was burnout and psychological distress, and it was conducted in Nigerian healthcare institution. So this applies to the study by Ubong 2011, Obonaya et al. 2012, Chinawa 2020, Kali 2020, Akani 2019, Douglas and Enikasole 2019, Adedayo and Ishola 2018, Azodo 2011, Ogundigbe 2013, Sion Fadipe 2019, Yunusa 2018, and Abodurin 2014. So now let's take a look at what the meta-analysis could look like if we want to actually extract studies from it. Here we have this review meta-analysis from online cognitive behavioral therapy on postpartum depression among adult mothers. So it's a systematic review meta-analysis. So what we extracted here? We're going to study outcome, publication dates, study design, objectives, sample size, intervention, duration of follow-up, main outcomes, and then study setting. There could still be other parameters, to be extracted, but here, looking at the study by Janati et al. 2020, it was a parallel group RCT. It examined the effectiveness of CBT, app-based CBT on postpartum depression. 75 women were onboarded for the intervention. It was start 8, and for the country, it was start 7. And here it was mobile-based CBT using 2 months EPDS scores It was conducted in Iran. And the same thing happened to the study by Shayapta Nani 2022, Mayrom et al. 2016, Lawam et al. 2019. Cool. Now, in this case, we're going to just have a very short practical on how we can extract studies for our study on determinants of teenage pregnancy. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to just create a form. Let's take up this part of this training. I'm going to just create a form. I'm going to title it Study Author. Now, before I go ahead, I'm just going to take a look at what my inclusion criteria looks like once more. So I'm going to quickly come back here, go back to inclusion and exclusion criteria training, open it, then go to the sample worksheet. Then I'm going to come down to my inclusion and exclusion criteria. Cool. So now I have this. That's fine. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick out 3 articles or 2 articles rather that I will use to just extract some information that might be relevant for me. So in this situation, for me to build up my data extraction, right? So there's some certain things that will be very imperative for me to pick out based on my question. First thing is study author. I need to know the objectives. I need to know the study design across the studies. Remember, in my inclusion and exclusion criteria, I already have criteria set out where I said that I'm only going to be interested in quantitative studies and all that, which are upper mind studies. Cool. Such as cross-sectional case studies, cohort, qualitative studies as well. So I need to know my sample size and participant characteristics. I also need to know, maybe I need to know the main findings. I need to know the study setting. So this is as basic as it should be, right? So in my participant characteristics, I'm going to extract information from knowing the age group of the participants that are included, and also the number of people that participated in that study. And the first thing I'm going to do is, since I have now gotten this information from my inclusion and exclusion criteria, I've been able to at least have a build-up of what this should be. And in terms of outcomes, that's going to relate to my findings, and the population is going to go to my sample. It's going to go to my sample size and participant characteristics as well as exposure. Then, in terms of duration, what's going to be my extraction already? I already said it's going to be from 2014 to 2024. So that means in my study author and date here, so it's going to study author and TA, I must make sure that all the articles I'm going to extract must be within the stipulated inclusion and exclusion criteria. And in this scenario, we're already assuming that we've got all the papers. So quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my search strategy. Immediately, I'm going to go back to my search strategy. Cool. So I'm just going to go back to my search strategy. I'll go back there, go back on the worksheet. I'll come down. Cool. So I'm just going to come here. So let's just get out 3 articles. So I'm going to come here, click here. I'm going to go to PubMed. Cool. Go to advanced. Okay. So I'm going to hit here. I'm going to clear everything here on my filters. So I have none. So I'm going to click this as my first query. I'm going to add it to search history. Then immediately I'm going to come back here. I'm going to take this. Remember that what I want to perform now is our search. I'm going to go for the last. Okay, cool. So quickly, I'm going to just add that. I'm going to just #1. Remember that if you want to understand how we perform the search strategy, you can look up our previous video. So I'm going to add that to my history. So I have this. So I'll quickly click on my search results. I just need 3 papers or 2. So I'm going to just quickly filter that 10 years, 2014 to 2024. That brings it down to 216. Then I'm going to pick out, I'm not interested in, remember, I'm not interested in systematic reviews and review. That was stated here in my inclusion and exclusion criteria here. I'm not interested in review articles. I'm only interested in primary studies, like observational studies. These are also what we call observational studies, like this. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click on observational. That brings it more down. Now I'm going to now the activities could still flow. So without wasting much time, okay, cool. So cool. So what we're gonna do here is, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move some of the files to my Google Scholar quickly. I'm just going to come there and I'm gonna search. In Nigeria, let's put just Nigeria. Okay, set our custom range to 2014. Okay, so I have this paper as my first paper. So I move to the next. Just going to save that. Okay, I'm going to save that on my desktop. So come back. Okay, so I'm going to open this as well. Okay, cool. So I have my 2 full text papers that I've already included. So I'm going to open this one quickly. I'm going to open that with Firefox. Now, cool. Now we want to perform a simple data extraction now using these 2 papers. The first paper by Envuladu et al. 2020, and the second paper by Ajao 2022. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, data extraction is not different from reading the full text of the paper, right? So let's assume now we have these 2 papers all in Lagos. Let's assume we want to add another one. Just quickly go to get another paper quickly. That. Let's put Ghana. Okay, got that correct. So that custom range to 214. So let's have, okay, cool. Okay, cool. Let's have this paper as well. Okay, do we need the PDF? Fine. All right. So we have our 3 papers here, which are all primary studies, right? So they are all original research articles. So refer back to our video here. Refer back to our explanation here. Where we said we're interested in what? Original peer review publication, and we wouldn't be including any sort of research. So Here we have our included studies. And the first thing we're going to do in extracting our form using extracting our related data using this is the first thing we're going to do is to put the study author on this. So we pick up the first study. So I'm going to split my screen so we can be able to see this. So let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to split my screen so that we can be able to see that clearly and watch while I extract all the relevant information. Okay. All right. So now looking at this question here, now so I'm just going to pick out the first article, which is close this. So I have this. This is the first study. Now, so the first one I'm going to extract from here is the study author. So the study author already is what? Ajayi. This is Abiodun Ajayi and Fatima. So it was published in 2020, so 2022 rather, sorry. So I'm going to put that 2022. Now the objective of this study is here. This is clearly this. Study examined this. So that is it. So I'm going to just quickly copy that. I'm going to put it there. Okay. Now in terms of design, so we need to read this article. So it was clearly stated here that the study used the cross-sectional exploratory design. So we're going to extract that. That's going to help. So we put that in. So these are the relevant information that we're extracting. It's now our self-form data extraction form. Now, the next thing we need to know is, remember, you need to read the full text so that to get more details about the paper, because most times you might need to look at the entire methodology of the paper so I can be able to get all the information that you really need. Now looking at the sample size characteristics. So let's be looking at the full text. I say study adopted this, so it was done among adolescents in Lagos, which included this study focused on students who dropped out of school with pregnancy due to pregnancy in previous years, as well as key informants knowledgeable. Okay, so the study included 750 teenage residents of the selected areas. Okay, so here, so we've got this. So we extract that. Sample size here is 750. Then move to the main findings. So we'll have to go to the main findings. So to get the summary of the main findings, you can usually get that from the summarized abstract. So here it's saying that the findings reviewed that overall this and that and that. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to pick up that and just going to pick out that. Okay, so setting is this. So congratulations, we've just performed our first data extraction for our first study. So we still keep the papers, because we still have the whole lots of things to do. Now remember that in terms of the methodology here, if we are to put in other stuffs like maybe we want to put other things like quantitative, we can actually add a structured questionnaire, was using a the structured questionnaire. That's also very imperative for us to add. And maybe the method of data analysis was you can also equally add that, using inferential statistics, using SPSS, statistical package, right? So all those things you might deem that fit to extract. So let's do the second example so we get towards perfection. So I'm going to look at the second paper by this et al. That is Envoladu et al. 2020 et al. It has more than 2 citations, 1, 2, 3, and there are 4. So this is 2020. Remember April 2020. This is where I got that from, and that's it. So now looking at the same study, the next thing we need to do now is to extract the aim, and this is the aim. So we pick it out, which is the main aim. The study was designed to determine the proportion of teenagers who have been pregnant and the outcome of pregnancy. So that could be the title or the aim. So you can take out that from that. So we already, by default, we know that the location there is just Plateau, right? So cool. And so in terms of the design, we have to still look out. We read the full text of the paper, and with the method, it was a community-based cross-sectional design, right? So we can take out that because of our time. See that community-based cross-sectional design. Now, in terms of the respondents and the sample size, you remember here in our next domain of our extraction, remember that this extraction form could also be unique to what your study aim could seem to, because there could be some other information that you might need to extract that are not really reflected on your title, or that are not really reflected on your, that are very unique to your title rather. So that means you have to thoroughly go through the full text of this paper, get some of the findings, properly critique the methodology, properly critique all these things. You really need to critique all these things to make sure you get yourself on board. And then we could now say, cool. And we have for our sample size, there's a summary here. Okay, yeah, we could go into the paper, go to the results, into the beginning of the results. That's where we're going to get that information. A total of 192 responded. So this is it. Okay, so pick that, come down, go to our data extraction form, put that in. Right? Cool. So that's 192 respondents each that's knowing this. So the next domain that we're interested in is okay, we've gotten the sample size, so we need the main findings. Can everybody get that, the summary of that quickly from our abstract with the data? So results. So we could just pick that as our main findings, which is summarized findings. We'll put that. Okay, that is our main findings. And then the next thing we need is the location, and that is what? Just Plateau State, Nigeria. So put that just Plateau. Can I spell that correctly? Cool. So we look at our next study that we've included, which is a qualitative study analysis on this. So the same thing also applies there. We go through the study design, we go through the aim, main findings, and all that. So these are all the information we technically need to go. We adopt the results, the main findings, we look at some of the location, and that was conducted in Ghana. So it's the same basic thing that we did for those other two studies. That's the same thing we're going to do in this case. So now, back. Now, having done that, now what are some of the common challenges that we face in our data extraction? Some of the challenges that we face is that sometimes there could be incomplete reporting, right? So there could be incomplete reporting. Some of the studies may not provide all the information that are needed, and it's something that is very common in our data extraction. Sometimes there could also be heterogeneity because you look at this study is a qualitative, because this one is quantitative, so it makes it very difficult for you to suit in. Like in the case of us looking at the last study now, this other paper here being a qualitative study now, right? So if we were to include some certain characteristics now, like sample size or maybe study design, you see that this is actually a more different approach. But although we've said in our inclusion and exclusion criteria that we're going to include qualitative studies, so that means in our data extraction, we must make sure we do what? We accommodate all the parameters that we've said that we are going to put in our own what? Practice what? Question. So most times there could be what? There could be heterogeneity. It means that these two studies now that we saw now are very similar. Like the study by Mvulado and 20 and this other study by Abiodun have a similar pattern. But when you're now bringing in a qualitative study, you might find a study that you're trying to see how you can bring in the domains and make it fit in. So that is what we mean by what? Heterogeneity. And also missing data. Some studies might not actually have content some certain things. You see some studies that you won't find the design in it, and you found everything. So it's missing data. So these are some of the common challenges that you're going to face during your data extraction. So how do we ensure, what are the benefits and how do we ensure consistency and accuracy? Some of these way now is by having a multiple reviewers. You don't have to remember that the systematic review is something that is it requires a multiple engagement because of bias. Because I can actually include, that is exploratory, whereas somebody else can interpret it as another thing. I can actually include, maybe while extracting relevant information, I'll say, that this is what it is. Whereas from another person's standpoint, it's another thing. The person is seeing it as another thing. And at the end of the day, it brings in bias because I'm just extracting based on my judgment. The same thing that applies in study selection also applies in what? Data extraction. That is why tools like Covidence, as we explained in our previous video, can be used in performing your data extraction. And also another thing there is, since we also look at pilot testing. So before we start the full extraction, we need to perform a pilot testing, right? It's very, very relevant for us to perform what? The pilot testing. So the pilot testing is just like trying to capture the necessary data ahead of time before we now do the needful, right? So we can now compare if our data extraction tool is actually valid. And that is what in primary research we call it reliability and validity. So it means that before you even start your data extraction form, you need to make sure that it's way in line, so that way your tool has the ability to capture everything. That is very imperative, because sometimes I can actually include, maybe in my data extraction form, I've omitted stuff like data analysis and all those things because I haven't really done the pilot testing. It will make me not extract all the relevant information. Do you understand? So it is very important that your tool is very rigorous and you're able to engage multiple people so that people can actually look at it to know that you've got the right information that you're seeking to extract. Then also another thing we need to look at now is what we call resolving discrepancies. This is particularly useful when you guys are more than 2 or 3 that are performing your review. So once there is any conflict, maybe when you've extracted that it is this and the other person saying that it is, and the third person needs to resolve it. That way, to make sure that whatever thing that we're extracting is very, 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 very well in line and detailed. So what are some of the best practices for data extractions? First of all, it could be to maintain a log, right? So it's very important for us to keep a detailed record of some of the decisions that we are making during our extraction to maintain transparency and because once you're removing any study or you're making any decision, you must make sure you put it down, right? Also, you need to document all the data, ensure that all the extracted data is properly documented and stored, allowing others to verify the findings. You need to keep it transparent. Use tools like Prisma to document the entire process. It's something that applies in your study selection. That is just what you really need to do in your data extraction as well. Before we look at our exercises, I just have to take a rundown again on some of the things that I have done. We started by introducing that we'll talk about data extraction form and the data extraction process where I did a practical. And we explained data extraction form, developing the data extraction form, other considerations where we had to develop as put in some of the characteristics that we want. We explained the entire data extraction process, in our practical, and also we looked at some of the common challenges in data extraction. We showed how you can ensure consistency and accuracy and some of the best practices. We understood data extraction in our discussion as just the process of gathering all the relevant information that you need from the selected studies to answer your question. And this also ensures that data needed for the analysis and synthesis is captured and consistently, and is captured consistently and is accurate. And also, it produces the characteristics of the included studies. This is just something that is very relevant. And we showed what the data extraction form could look like. Data extraction form is just like, it could be a spreadsheet, it could be an electronic form, it could be anything, right? It could also be in form of a checklist that you're using to document all the information. Then later you present it in a table. But then we made it very simple by using a tabular template. And we also explained some of the information that should be contained there. And we said that your data extraction form is relevant based on your research question. It reflects your research question. That's why there are some unique things that have to be in your data extraction. Then we said that this is what a tabular data extraction form could look like. It contains the study author, objective, study author and year, that could study author and year there. Research objective, or sometimes the title, methodology, sample size, findings, and study setting. Then we talked about how to develop one. You need to just pay attention on your inclusion criteria. Look at some of the information that are relevant to your question, and that's it. And look at the snippet of it before we study the practical, where we talk about an example of impact of diet on diabetes in Nigeria. And so that's all the data extraction form may include fields like type of diet, step design, preparation characteristics, outcomes, settings, etc. We also said that some of other considerations in a data extraction form could sometimes be the limitations and strengths. Some of these things are actually reported in the papers, the individual papers. So it's necessary for you to capture them, right? And the country or region, depending on the question, the CAPS quality score, sometimes also, and others too. Then I went ahead to now show a detailed example here where I explained what the data extraction form could look like. And I showed some example of some research questions, the question from diabetes self-management education, knowledge among nurses in the United Kingdom. I showed some domains. I also showed another data extraction form about experiences and challenges faced by women with postpartum depression in assessing mental health care in Nigeria. I showed some of the information that were extracted from this particular sample. And also, I showed another example about the effectiveness of lifestyle modification in preventing gestational diabetes among pregnant women in sub-Saharan Africa. This was the third sample that we used. Then we showed some of the domains and how data were extracted from these papers. And again, we showed evidence from a systematic review on workplace violence among healthcare staff in Nigeria. And we technically showed all the domains as well. We didn't stop there also. We also showed another sample of effectiveness of online CBT on postpartum depression. Remember that online CBT is different from the physical cognitive behavioral therapy. And we showed some of the information that could be assessed. This talked about app-based, talked about video-based, internet-based, and all that. And then we did our practice question here where I came up with some of the domains that I extracted. Just 6 domains: study author and year, objective, study design, participant characteristics, main findings, and study setting. And I quickly selected 3 papers: paper by Abiodun Ajayi, paper by Mvuladu, and the Ghanaian paper by Kurugu et al. And we were able to successfully extract all the relevant information based on our table to deem fit our data extraction. And these 3 papers are going to form the basis for our synthesis in our liquid. So I will quickly save that to our, I'm going to save that to our training form. I'm going to save that. I'm going to save it here. Put it here. I'm going to call this article 1. Cool. I'm going to save that as well because we'll be using that quickly. I'm going to call that article 2, and I'm going to save this into that folder. It automatically appears there. What to call it? Okay, cool. So we examined these 3 different articles, went through their domains, and we extracted all the relevant information that were imperative to us. Quickly and briefly, in a nutshell. And that is where we now went on to talk about some of the best practices and some of the problems. Talk about some of the data extraction process, where we say that the process includes identifying the key data, where we can also use softwares like Covidence and Ryan. We see that some of the common challenges in data extraction form includes it could be incomplete reporting, it could be heterogeneity, it could also be missing data. And we talked about some of the benefits where we need to use multiple reviewers, we need to use what we call pilot testing, and our multiple reviewers has to be well set up in order to be able to resolve discrepancies. Then we say that some of the best practices is just to maintain a log, document all your data, and keep it transparent. And this is where we come to the end of this session. So if you're looking at this, you have to try and start today by developing your own data extraction form. So you choose any sample article. Some of these articles, I'll put them at the end. Take out some of the domains that are relevant to the article. 3 of them. So we've got this exercise also to extract some information from the article. So I've just put 3 of my papers here for my articles. The one I published in Health, also the one published in Academic Research, an engineering journal, and one of my publications in Medicinal Balea, which I explored the biomedical waste management and disposal practices in Port Harcourt. So thank you for having me for this session. In our next session, which is going to be our 12th session, we're going to be looking at the advanced data extraction process for our systematic review.